Well, I didn't announce it, but I thought about it. Maybe I should have. I guess we'll just kind of see how it goes. We had the preaching meeting yesterday, and so Monday was all filled up, yesterday was all filled up, and then today was all filled up. And I tried last night looking over some things for church history stuff. It's like there's a few issues I need to kind of work through and actually take the time to work through these before we can take the next step. So I thought maybe this evening we would try to do a Q&A. And I kind of like doing Q&As. They, more often than not, they humble me and show me how much I don't know. But the good thing about that is it sends me to the scriptures looking for the answer, and then I know it next time. So if anybody wants to get us started with a question, Bible question, I'm sure I've raised more questions in people's minds about a lot of things than I've answered probably, or the church or history or I guess anything, and I can just tell you no, I can't answer that right now, but I'll find the answer. And if let's see here, this Sunday planning to finish up Numbers, and then Deuteronomy should only take us a couple weeks, because so much of Deuteronomy is just a repetition of what we've already gone over as far as Sunday school goes. So once I'm done with Deuteronomy, then I'm planning to do another Sunday school Q&A. And so if you ask me a question tonight and I don't know the answer, which is probable, I'll find the answer and then we'll add it to what we're going to do that Sunday. So anybody want to start us out? Sure. You know what? That is just as good sometimes. Do you know what it is already? Okay. Right. Thomas says, let us go so that we may die with him.
Thomas said, let us all go so we all may die.
Right.
And it just kind of intrigued me when I was reading that Thomas was the only one of the 12 that said, let us go that we all may die. But we find later on that Thomas was the one that actually spoke up and doubted.
Right.
He's the only one that spoke up and doubted, even though all of them skedaddled.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting, isn't it? But I think, though, when it comes to the situation there with Lazarus, I think, and I could totally be wrong, but I almost think that he's being almost sarcastic. Thomas is kind of being sarcastic. Well, he's going to die. Well, I guess we might as well all just go and die. Is kind of the attitude he's got with it. That's how I've always read and understood it. I could be wrong, but I kind of deduce that from what happens later. Unless I see the nail prints in his hand and stuff like that, then I'm not going to believe. I think that attitude is the same attitude he had back there with Lazarus. Yeah. Yep, it's and well, and it's something because he sees Lazarus come out of he's been dead for 4 days. It's just like Israel. Well, yeah, God can destroy the nation of Egypt. He can part the Red Sea, but there's no way he's going to furnish a table for us in the wilderness. I mean, that's just not going to happen. Yeah, sure. Jesus can raise Lazarus from the dead, but he can't raise himself from the dead. And it's interesting, too, the connection. that both of them have to do with the resurrection. He saw Lazarus, and the purpose of that with Lazarus was to prove that he is the resurrection and the life. And then later on, Samuel, no sir. And then later on, after Jesus is resurrected, he's not believing then. Yeah, that was enough for him. Yeah, that was enough. Right. Well, that, and it almost kind of reminds me. It's not the same, but it's almost like, you ever see those guys that they're kind of like the bully or whatever, and they're all big and bad, Yeah, well, I'll show them, and go on, and then it's like, he's standing right behind me, isn't he? Yeah. Well, unless I can touch his hands and thrust my hand into his side, there he is. Yeah, okay. Never mind. Anybody else? And I can always find something to talk about. I'm sorry. I thought about it. I thought about sending out a text this morning, and then I forgot about it, and then it's like, well, maybe just kind of. Did you have one?
That was John who ran to the tomb on that Sunday. Was it Sunday morning?
Yes, John and Peter.
John and Peter.
Yes.
It doesn't specifically say John. It just says a disciple or apostle. So I believe it was John.
Yeah, it was John and Peter. That's. Let's see. Yeah. So it doesn't specifically say in John chapter 20, but John has this very unique way of having himself in the narrative without actually mentioning himself. And so he just says that other disciple. And then yeah, or that too. Let me see here. So let me look at one more here real quick. Yeah. So it doesn't specifically say, I don't think. And really the focus is on Peter, and I think that's why. Because Peter is the one who denied Jesus, and then it's somewhere in the, it doesn't specifically show it in the narrative, Jesus appearing to him specifically, but finds out later when, oh boy, now my mind just drew a blank. Which gospel is that? I think it's Mark. Let me see, Mark 16. It's not that one, is it? Maybe it's Luke then. Must be Luke. Okay. Because it says, because they specifically say when they get back to the disciples that he appeared to Peter somewhere along the way. I'll have to look that up. Here, let me do this. I'll cheat. I'm not going to ask Google. I'm going to look it up in the concordance. I'm not cheating. Here it comes. Hath appeared to Simon. That's it. Luke 24:34. That's why I couldn't find it. It's appeared to Simon. So when Jesus appears to the disciples on the road to Emmaus after he breaks bread with them, after he reveals himself to them, they run back to Jerusalem to tell the disciples, and it says there in verse 34, the Lord is risen indeed and hath appeared to Simon. So the focus of the whole thing was that he appeared to Peter, and I think that's because Peter was the one who had denied him 3 times. And so the Lord did a number of things to show Peter, look, I haven't cast you off. Peter thought he had been. I think Peter is in one of those situations where he thought he was totally disqualified. Because after Jesus died and after he rose again, where does Peter go? He goes back to the fishing boat. Well, I guess I'm done. I'm going fishing. And everybody else is like, well, if you're done, then we're done. I guess we'll go with you. We don't have anything else better to do. And so Jesus makes it a point to appear to Peter and has certain conversations with Peter that he doesn't have with anybody else to show, look, I haven't cast you off. I am restoring you to this position and what I called you to do to begin with. Did that have anything to do with your question? Oh. Whether it was John that went with Peter. Yeah. Okay. You're right, he did, didn't he? And did he do it? Yep. Paula, did you have a question? Is that why you said that? Or?
I have a question. Earlier in the week when I was reading my Bible,
Oh.
I can't even tell you what it was.
Okay. Well, I didn't know earlier in the week. Otherwise, I would have told you then. Why do I? Okay. I'm not convinced one way or the other. The Shroud of Turin. I'm not 100% convinced one way or the other. I lean more towards not. And there's a few reasons for that. One, I think Jesus on purpose kept any physical description of himself gone, and specifically came in a day when he wasn't going to get snapshotted or anything like that. Also, what would the point be of the Shroud? Now, there are some interesting things about the Shroud of Turin that I don't doubt that there is something, I don't know if you want to say miraculous about it that happened, but I don't know that it's necessary. Supernatural would be a better way to say it. I think there are some things about the Shroud of Turin that are supernatural, given the fact that we cannot today replicate that, what's on there. Now, and maybe that's not supernatural. Maybe that's just kind of like the pyramids. We still can't figure out how those were made, and that wasn't a supernatural feat. It just, we don't know the technology. Did you have something to say? Right. Yeah.
Exactly like, the snake on the...
Yeah, I was just going to say, Nehushtan.
They ended up worshiping that.
Right.
They got broken, so they would stop. But here's, as we were talking,
Oh, that is an interesting thought. If it's Lazarus, but what?
It shows that.
Oh, yeah.
The feet and the hands of Lazarus didn't have that.
This is true. The biggest question for me, so there's a couple things that I have an issue with. One, from a physical standpoint, person's too tall to be Jewish. Is Jesus really head and shoulders above the rest? Because the Shroud of Turin is for a man that's like 6 foot. That's too tall for a typical Jewish man. I mean, we know King Saul was a larger man, but King Saul was also specifically said that, he was a good-looking man too, and his height was one of those things. Well, Jesus was the opposite of that. You also have the fact that whoever's in the shroud has awfully long hair. Jesus didn't have long hair. Jesus did not have the vow of the Nazarite. He was from Nazareth. He was not a Nazarite. We know he did not have a Nazarite vow at any time because he touched dead bodies. He touched unclean things fairly regularly. So that's an issue. Also, if this is the case, why is it not really in existence until, what was it, like the 1200s or something like that, when this thing begins to come around and start to circulate? And why give it to the Roman Catholics? That's a big thing too. It's, since when do we trust things that come from the Roman Catholics? Like Bible manuscripts, right? All the textual criticism uses Sinaiticus and Vaticanus as the most authoritative text by which you evaluate every other text. Why would you do that? So I don't doubt that there's something supernatural about it, but the fact that it would be Jesus, that's highly speculative. Yes.
Well, as you think, or as I'm thinking on it, it doesn't say in the Bible that the Marys that came in, or the Mary that went in and saw the cloth laying there, she did not take them.
True.
That left those cloths there for anybody to take.
Right.
And if those Roman soldiers came back, they could have confiscated it.
Yeah.
So there was no evidence
True.
that, so.
And another thing too, when Jesus was taken down, he was wrapped. This thing is just folded over. So that becomes an issue as well. It doesn't fit the narrative, at least as far as our Bible goes.
Do we wrap things, do you wrap stuff the same way I wrap stuff? Or do Japanese people wrap things way different than we do?
Right.
Tatamasa came over and he brought us gifts. I went, wow, who wrapped this? My mom wrapped them. I said, how do they wrap stuff like that? They go corner to corner, corner to corner.
Right.
And it's very neat and very, things are folded in and so everything is straight. I would wrap something like that. It just takes too long.
Yeah.
So, how they folded that cloth might not be how we're thinking mummy-wise, aren't we?
It's possible.
That's hard to wrap a dead person like that. You gotta pick them up and I know how heavy a dead person is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tried to hold Otis up, and I couldn't. They're dead weight, so to lay the cloth down, put him on it, wrap it.
Yeah.
Seems much more easy to make.
And then here's, I've watched, I forget the guy's name, but he's like the world's foremost expert on the Shroud of Turin and goes around and has the exhibit and everything. I think he's the only one that has like a digital facsimile replica exact facsimile of the Shroud of Turin and all this stuff. And it's very convincing to listen to him. But when it comes right down to it, what is our faith supposed to be in? Why do we need it? What does that have to do, anything at all, with our faith? If it was legitimate, that would be pretty cool. It would be cool, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change anything. And if it got destroyed, well, it'd be unfortunate if it was real, but it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything at all. Nothing's added to our faith. Nothing's diminished from our faith. Our faith is supposed to be in the wisdom and power of God and the gospel. And, whether that shroud is the real thing or not, who knows?
So it's kind of like when Jesus came and Thomas had been doubting and Jesus showed him
Mhm.
his hands. It's like that. So perhaps the shroud of Turin is for those who are doubters and need to see.
If that was the case, it would not be with the Catholic Church.
Well, like I said, it was the Romans that had, they were the ones that were standing in front of the
True.
guarding it, and they were the ones that were in power in Jerusalem at the time.
Right.
So, yes, I know, but Rome is Rome.
um,
I don't know. Rome
the
is run by the church, and
now it is, but
but the Romans are Romans, so they pass it down to other Romans.
well, even if that was the case, the fact that they have it and they don't even have the gospel is a clear evidence that that's not what it's for, because it would go somewhere else if that's what the Lord's intention was. That's why the Bible has been preserved through Bible-believing, gospel-preaching people, as opposed to the Roman Church itself. Also, John is very clear that, yes, there were the miracles and such that were done, but John said, these are written that you might believe. And so we're supposed to believe on something that took place back then, not on anything else other than what's been written. And there's nothing written about the Shroud of Turin. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Okay. Well, you succeeded.
Yes.
Yes.
Did Jonah die after leaving the boat when he got swallowed by the whale?
Did he die in the whale's belly? Is that what you're asking?
You didn't ask us, because it says that he prayed. How can a dead person pray?
Right. Let's look at Jonah and just kind of see how this is worded, because I know this is a little controversial. See, is Jonah in the New Testament? Right. Okay, I got it now. All right. So, chapter 1, verse 17, now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish's belly, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice. For thou hadst cast me into the deep, in the midst of the sea, and floods compassed me about, and thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then I said, I am cast out of thy sight, yet I will look again toward thy holy temple. The waters compassed me about, even to the soul. The depths closed me round about. The weeds were wrapped about my head. I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord. And my prayer came in unto thee into thine holy temple. They that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy, but I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay that I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. I'll tell you what I think. Okay? There's a few things we have to consider here. And I know there's controversy over this, especially nowadays, over the doctrine of hell, and I'm still trying to figure out how exactly I want to address that. So when we come across the word hell in the King James Bible, the word hell in 1611 didn't exactly have the exact same connotation that we add to it today. The word hell simply meant the unseen place. The original English word meant the unseen place, and is a word that can mean the grave, or it can also mean the grave in the sense of the place of the departed. And so this is where we would get the idea of, in the Old Testament, everybody went to the grave, and essentially everybody went to hell in the technical sense, because hell had, two chambers, I guess. Technically you could say it had three parts, because you had the burning hell, then you had the air-conditioned side, and then you had the great gulf fixed in between. Now, when Jonah here says, out of the belly of hell cried I, he is speaking of the fact that he has resolved in himself that he has come to his grave, that here is where I am going to die. Now, he's not dead yet. But I think when we get over here, because Jonah is writing this, obviously, not from the whale's belly. He is writing this sometime after the ordeal with Nineveh. But when he says here in verse 7, when my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came in unto thee. I think at that moment, he was at least in the process of dying. And that's when real repentance finally took hold of him at that point. And that's when his prayer came in unto God, and that's when the fish spit him up. Did he actually come to death? I don't know. I don't know that he necessarily died. You could say from the parallel of Jesus, as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so the Son of Man would be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. I don't know that that necessarily means that Jonah died. It just means that Jesus is using the analogy that Jonah was in his grave for 3 days, because that's where Jonah was planning to die. He had...
Almost like a comatose state then?
I don't know. I think he was in that process of drifting off, where his soul is in the process of dying, where he's kind of taking his last breaths, and then he was spit up and the Lord revived him. I don't know that he necessarily actually died. What did he have to drink? Oh, how did he survive for 3 days and 3 nights? Well, if a person's in decent shape, a person can live for 3 days without food and water. But you start getting past 3 days without water, and it's not going to be much longer. What's that? What if? Yeah, that's true too. Right. Yeah. You know, the interesting thing too with that's kind of spectacular with this is the Ninevites worshipped a fish god. And so this would make the message of Jonah all the more applicable to them when he has just been spit up by a giant fish and comes in and he smells like dead fish. And he's like, boy, I got a whale of a tale for you guys to listen to. And then he begins preaching. Well, it's like, as far as their mind is concerned, God, they knew at that point, God sent this person here to tell us this. And, of course, their mind had to be changed about who that God is. But, which obviously we saw happened. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but I don't know that Jonah necessarily died. I think he was certainly on the brink of death at that point. I would think he would have to be, because you're not going to be there for too long and stay alive. It's not like you have anything to eat. It's not like you can drink anything. So he was certainly on the verge of death. So that's what I think. I know I used to think Jonah died and did actually go to hell, and then the Lord raised him up. I don't think that anymore. I don't know how that would have been possible. The Lord can do anything, but I mean, just with the way God does those things, I don't think that's... Right. Yes, Paula?
Oh, I was gonna say, just being in the whale's belly was like being in a...
Oh, it probably was. In that stomach acid and everything, that probably was close enough for him to realize what... That would have been a mercy, I'm sure. Okay. Anything else? Paula?
What do you think happened to the ark? Do you think the ark is in heaven?
Are you talking about the Ark of the Covenant?
Yes.
No, I don't think the Ark of the Covenant's in heaven.
Is it in that little village in Africa?
No, I don't think it's there either. I don't think the Ark of the Covenant exists anymore.
Where do you suppose that thing is?
I don't think it exists anymore.
What do you think might happen? Exploding? From the
So during the Maccabean revolt between the testaments there, it was destroyed. I think it's the book of Maccabees actually records that, and it's fairly accurate history. You don't want to get your theology from it, but it's a fairly accurate history of what's taking place between the testaments when Antiochus Epiphanes had taken over Jerusalem and Israel. They destroyed the Ark of the Covenant.
How do you suppose they destroyed it? You think they threw rocks at it?
Probably just crushed it.
Or crushed it because they can't have any contact with it?
Well, they
Would
could.
At the other end, like, hitting it
Oh, they could. The Philistines didn't have any problem taking it.
because it was electrical.
Well, Philistines didn't have any problem taking it. It was only the Jews that weren't allowed to touch it. The Philistines took it. Philistines walked off with it. Right. They kept getting cursed. Right. So they didn't have they didn't know the regulation to not touch it.
What was it, those gloves?
Rubber gloves. Yeah, so I don't think the Ark of the Covenant exists. So there was a fella, was it in the 70s and 80s, named Ron Wyatt. Probably most people that have done any type of looking into biblical archaeology and stuff have heard of Ron Wyatt. Ron Wyatt was a Seventh-day Adventist, and most of the things that he found as a result of what Seventh-day Adventists call the spirit of prophecy. And what they believe that is where the Holy Spirit comes on somebody and through divine inspiration tells them, communicates truth to them. The interesting thing, the convenient thing with Ron Wyatt's finds is that nobody else can find them. Or most of them. I take that back, most of them. So he was right when it came to the real Mount Sinai. And that's been confirmed numerous times by numerous archaeologists, that it's in Arabia, not in the Sinai Peninsula, and very likely the place where Moses first got water out of the rock. So those things have been found, and that's been confirmed by many people. But he supposedly was in Israel, and he kind of lost control of himself for a moment. He pointed over to a trash heap and said, "The Ark of the Covenant is in there." Well, he started this archaeological dig illegally, but sometimes I guess you got to do what you got to do if you think you got to do it. And he was down there with, as I understand it, with a Muslim, and the Muslim was the guy running the jackhammer and stuff like that because they're going under the Temple Mount area. And they get down to this place, and the guy crawls into this cavern, and then he comes out, and supposedly, why does it go? So, I quit, I'm not going back, I'm not going any farther. And so Ron Wyatt looks in, and he says that he sees the Ark of the Covenant there. And I've watched the videos where he was there with the people saying, the Ark of the Covenant's in here. Nobody else can look at it. Nobody else can look at it. God has told me only certain people can see this thing. And then he kind of, and it's unfortunate, he kind of put forth this idea that on the mercy seat, so on the top of the mercy seat there was blood, dried blood. There's this black stuff that was there, and it's dried blood. Now, 2,000 years, that's a long time for some dried blood to just kind of sit out in the open. But dried blood there, and then above the Ark of the Covenant there was a crack going through the mountain. And then on top of that is supposedly the site where Jesus was crucified. Because Jesus would have been the only person crucified in that particular spot. And so Jesus' blood ran down onto the Ark of the Covenant and has been sitting there for 2,000 years. And supposedly they tested it, and it was, blood from somebody that didn't have a physical, biological father. I believed that when I was in high school, but at some point, there's a lot of those things that don't make sense. Why does Jesus' blood have to go down onto the Ark of the Covenant? One, and the Bible doesn't say it had to go there. And two, what does he need the Ark of the Covenant for? Because he is the Ark of the Covenant. He is the presence of God. And I don't necessarily believe anything Ron Wyatt says. Once you start saying, the spirit of prophecy told me this, you have lost all credibility. And then, he found the place where the chariot wheels are and stuff like that from the Egyptian chariots, from the crossing of the... it's been a long time for wooden chariot wheels to be under the Red Sea. And, he found Noah's Ark and all this stuff. Some of the things he found may have been legitimate, but why is that on some of these things, he's the only person that's ever seen these things, and there's no documentation or evidence of any of them. It's unfortunate. So, what was your question again? Where's the Ark of the Covenant? Yeah, I don't think it exists anymore. I think it's gone. And which is fascinating because when the Temple Veil was split, what did they do for all that time for, what would that have been? 300 years from the time of the Maccabees. No, not even 300 years, 200 years from the time of the Maccabees until Christ's crucifixion. What were they doing? Because the high priest is supposed to go in once every year with blood to put on the mercy seat, and there's no mercy seat there. Whether it was destroyed during the time of the Maccabees or not, it was never there that whole time. And and then when that veil was rent in twain, it just exposed this charade that's been going on all that time, and how corrupt the religion was and how fake it was, because there was no substance to it anymore.
Is there supposed to be the Ark of the Covenant again in New Jerusalem?
No.
When he sets up his new kingdom?
Nope.
You go to the temple and you worship?
Nope. So the Ark of the Covenant, the top of it had the mercy seat, which is where God would reside. Well, during the kingdom, he's going to sit on the throne of David. He's not going to sit on the mercy seat. He's going to sit on a kingly throne of judgment during his reign here.
Well, I just was wondering if it might be in there somewhere.
I don't think so.
Sit on it, but they're like a piece of furniture.
Yeah, no. So there is no Ark of the Covenant anymore. There is a throne seat, but that's the Lord's throne in heaven now, which is what the Ark of the Covenant was a picture of. Anything else? Sam. Why did he get swallowed by the whale? Because God called Jonah to go to Nineveh and preach God's message to them. And Jonah refused to listen to God's calling, and he thought he was going to run away from God. And so God sent this fish after him to take him back and to basically give him a spanking. See, when Mommy and Daddy tell you guys God gives grown-ups a spanking, that's how he does it. It's not always by a fish, but it hurts a lot more. Hurts a lot more, and it's much longer lasting. Okay? We done? All right. Well, if you have more questions or whatever, here in a few weeks we're going to do it during Sunday.